today is almost done, right? Let's look into the future. Pakistani diaspora is going to get good news. The next senator is going to be from the Pakistani community. And all the men thought, it's me. Come July of 2010, well, it's a woman, Salma Ataullah Jan. There were a lot of upset people. So that's my journey. That's my journey into politics.
What are the other challenges that Pakistani diaspora is facing, and how do you propose to mitigate them?
We talk about the strategic corridor that we have, the Asia-Pacific corridor that a few years ago has included Pakistan. But when you really sit and when you really want to do something, it doesn't deliver. Like, we had such awful visa acceptance ratio when it came to visas for our businessmen diaspora that wanted to come here, invest, that wanted to come here and exhibit their product and services into that expo. So that was just an abomination.
Canada was also instrumental in the bridges that they had. They're called away bridges, because if you remember, most of the bridges in Pakhtunkhwa was swept away, and these are temporary bridges.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी, मेरा नाम सलमान जावेद है और पाकिस्तान पिवट की नई एपिसोड के साथ मैं आपके सामने हाजिर हूँ। सलमा अताउल्ला जान एक ऐसा नाम है जो कि शायद पाकिस्तान के लोगों को बहुत कम पता होगा, लेकिन ये हमारी पाकिस्तान की सरजमीन की एक ऐसी बेटी हैं जो कि सर कनाडा के अंदर एक बहुत बड़ी पोजीशन के ऊपर काम कर रही हैं। वहाँ पे सेनेटर हैं अपने इलाके की तरफ से, और उनकी ह्यूमन राइट्स कमेटी जो है उसकी चेयर भी हैं। केपी से इनका ताल्लुक़ है, और सबसे बड़ी बात ये कि, या मैं इसको बड़ी बात समझता हूँ कि एक पॉलिटिकल लेगेसी है उनकी, जिसमें वो बाचा खान जो कि खान अब्दुल गफ्फार खान साहब थे, उनकी ग्रैंडनीस हैं वो। और एक पॉलिटिकल लेगेसी के साथ चलते हुए जब वहाँ पे वो पहुँची, उन्होंने उसी चीज़ को वहाँ पे कैसे कैरी आउट किया और किस तरह पाकिस्तान को रिप्रेजेंट करी हैं। बहुत सारी बातें उनसे हुई इस्लामोफोबिया के ऊपर, किस तरह वो ह्यूमन राइट्स के ऊपर काम कर रही हैं, पाकिस्तान के लिए क्लाइमेट चेंज पर उन्होंने क्या काम किया, कनाडा और पाकिस्तान के दरमियान जो ब्रिज है उसको दोबारा से रीस्ट्रक्चर करने के लिए उन्होंने क्या क्या इक़दाम किए हैं, पाकिस्तानी कम्युनिटी के हवाले से उनके क्या मामलात हैं और किस तरह उनको डील करती हैं या उनको क्या एडवाइस करती हैं। इस पे बहुत सारी चीज़ें जो हैं वो उन्होंने डिस्कस की हैं। एंड आई फेल्ट वेरी प्राउड वाइल टॉकिंग टू हर, वाइल हैविंग अ कन्वर्सेशन विद हर, के किस तरह पाकिस्तान की एक बेटी जो है वो वहाँ पे जाके हमारा नाम रोशन करी है। इसके लिए मैं स्पेशली शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहूँगा बुशरा रहमान का, जो कि पाकिस्तान कनाडा ट्रेड एसोसिएशन की प्रेसिडेंट हैं और कनाडा में ही मुकीम हैं, दोस्त हैं, हमारी कलीग हैं, और उन्होंने बेसिकली इस में बहुत अहम किरदार अदा किया कि मुझे और उनको कनेक्ट किया। वो भी आपको इस सेशन के अंदर कुछ सवालात करते हुए नज़र आएंगी जो कि बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सवालात हैं। एंड मैं मतलब चाहता था कि वो वाकई वाले सवालात ख़ुद करें, तो उनको भी मैंने इस प्रोग्राम के अंदर शरीक किया है। आई होप कि ये एपिसोड आपको पसंद आएगी। लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द सेशन।
First of all, again, thank you so much for being on the show and being generous enough to accept our request. And it's quite, an honor to speak to a person who is sitting outside of Pakistan, but still making Pakistan's name, proud. My first question will be from you to tell us about your journey towards this, where you are right now. Immigration from Pakistan, going there in Canada, getting into the politics, and then getting where you are right now. It's definitely a journey with a lot of highs and lows. So can you tell us about something about that?
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for taking an interest in, in my life and what I'm doing. I think it's important that the messages are carried that, even though we're outside Pakistan, we still, I laugh and I say sometimes the ones who are outside are more loyal Pakistanis because, our heart beats for Pakistan. I came in 1980, so I've spent most of my life in Canada. And I was initially the biggest shock I got, culture shock was nothing. I had been to the Murray Convent of Jesus and Mary, was very familiar with the language, had no problem with English. But what strikes you is the loneliness when you come here. We come from homes that are full of people, and he came here and I was all alone. And I remember when my husband went to work for 3 days, I kept the TV on, and then I thought, okay, I have to do something. So the school next to me was looking for somebody, to be like a teacher's aide for a couple of hours a week. So I went and applied for that position, and I got that position. So that kind of helped me sort of integrate into Canadian society. And, the journey to politics, I come from a political family. Dad was a senator, dad's Mamu was Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. So politics was nothing new in our family. And I was very interested in the politics of Canada. But initially when you come, you're so busy in trying to settle down. And then I had my children. I had my older daughter Anushka, and then I had my younger one Shanze, and I was very involved in their school. The schools over here have a parent-teacher council, and basically you interact with the principal of the school, and then you interact with the school boards also, just to keep an eye on what's happening in the school, what's important, what can be done, what, how do we improve this? They like input from parents. So I ran that council for 16 years, and it was a good way for me to be in the school, find out, what was happening, what they were teaching. And then people reached out to me, the Pakistani Canadian professionals and academics, come on our board. And while I was on that board, the group of us, we did a fundraiser and had a room named in the hospital after Qadi Azam Jinnah. Stanley Walport was our main guest. And then, Pushtun Association started and another association started. So I became a bit of a community activist. And people would keep telling me you should get involved in politics, but I never thought about really active involvement in politics, because in Pakistan, the injustice we sometimes do to our women is we educate them, but then we want them to lead very traditional lives. And it's a huge step to come here and be independent and do things on your own, because sometimes, your confidence is whittled away at, and I laugh and joke with some of my cousins who used to tell me, in Pashto, what do you know? You're a girl, right? And I say, well, see where the girl is and see where you are now. So, I was asked by the Conservative Party of Canada to run for them, be a candidate in 2008. And I did that. And in 2009, I had a chance meeting with the Prime Minister. And we had a conversation, and something I said struck him. And I believe he took that decision that I would be the next senator from Ontario. So in Canada, we have 105 senators for the whole of Canada, and Ontario has 24 senators. And I was in Pakistan, and they were looking for me, and they said, where is she? And I remember calling them, and I said, oh my God, there's going to be another election, because it was a minority government. And they said, no, when you come, can you come to Ottawa? So, and I came to Ottawa, Baqaida, you go through a process, right? It's not just that you're just appointed, there's a process. So in 2010, I was appointed, and the funny story is, I think it's better for me to tell you some of the funny stories. So the day of my meeting with the Prime Minister, another minister came, and then with the minister, he told people in the community, oh, Pakistani diaspora is going to get good news. The next senator is going to be from the Pakistani community. And this we're talking, I think, is sometime in the summer, or maybe October of 2009. I think it was September, October of 2009. And all the men thought, it's me. Come July of 2010, well, it's a woman, Salma Ataullah Jan. And there were a lot of upset people. So that's my journey. That's my journey into politics, and the challenges, and So
you were there to see the. So you were there to see the faces.
I was there, like we had all the men thumping their chests, it's me, and they said, who the heck is she? So
that could have been, a brilliant scene to watch. Ma'am, what are the achievements so far that you have done so far, being a senator in Ottawa or in Canada? What are the major achievements that you can count that you have done so far?
Well, the first one was, if you remember, Pakistan had a horrible flood in 2010. And I was in Chicago, and I sent a message to Prime Minister Harper's office that this has happened in Pakistan and we need to help Pakistan. And I came, and I was at a press conference with him for the ethnic media, and we talked about the floods, and he said, you know what, we'll match the funds. So every dollar that the Pakistani diaspora raises, we'll match, the Canadian government will match it. So we ended up, I think it was $80 million that was sent to Pakistan. Canada was also instrumental in, the bridges that they had. They're called away bridges, because if you remember, most of the bridges in Pukhtunkhwa was swept away, and these are temporary bridges. So that was one of my achievements. Just because Prime Minister Harper he used to listen. He would, and react, and he asked me, is that what the community would like? And I said, they would really like that. And I also did a personal visit then to some of the camps in Nowshera and Charsada. The next thing was polio. Um, uh, it was somebody who worked in global affairs, which is the equivalent of our foreign affairs department. And he was on the Pakistan desk and they really wanted to do something. He said, I am moving and I really want to do something for Pakistan. And Senator, do something, do something. And end polio, they approached me. They said, we've approached many people in the parliament, but nobody's willing to do an event. Since you're from Pakistan, would you do something? Because at that time in 2010-11, I would think I was the only Pakistani in the parliament. And I said, yes, I will. I'll do an event in the parliament. And we invited the minister to come. We kind of almost sort of forced his hand. He came, and they know that when they're invited and it's a serious event like that, he made an announcement of $20 million for the fight against polio. And I was in Pakistan when one of the other ministers came to give the check. We were in Lahore. We met, I think in those days, Raja Sanaullah was a minister and there was a few other people. I remember meeting them in Lahore. But we met the frontline workers. And, the women were so happy when I went to them and started speaking to them in Urdu. And they realized I was one of them. They were thrilled beyond words. So we did that. But I've also, I've been on the Human Rights Committee since 2010. The Senate has a very active, very well-known Human Rights Committee. And I've been the chair now for the past, I think it's almost 6-7 years. And in that capacity, I've done studies, which impact Canadians, but also impact, the racialized people. So the latest one was in June of 2022. I was going through the papers and just reading up, and there's a National Council of Canadian Muslims, and they had put out a statement saying that the most Muslims killed in a G7 country was Canada. Well, I was shocked by that because that's not the perception we have of Canada. So I thought we should do a study on Islamophobia. So we did a study on Islamophobia. In between, I've come with parliamentarians to Pakistan. I came with a senator and an MP. We visited Lahore, Karachi, went to some of the schools, visited some NGOs. I was on a Commonwealth delegation that came to Pakistan. I think it was 2018. So I'm on and off. I stay, like I'm a Canadian senator. I do a lot of work for Canada. I represent Canada overseas, but I also haven't forgotten my roots. So I try and do as much as I can for Pakistan. So anyway, our study on Islamophobia, landmark study, nobody else had done that. And it was almost a year-long study. We had 138 witnesses, Muslims, non-Muslims. And, we also traveled throughout Canada to meet people.
So what are the findings of that study?
Well, we found out that, one, we have to educate the educators. Racism is rampant, Islamophobia is rampant, and there's a gendered aspect to it. If you're a woman, if you're a woman, then it's worse for you. We found that if you're a woman and a Black woman wearing a hijab, it's really bad for you because they're regularly spat on, have coffee thrown at them, and kicked to the ground. We're seeing now that we're seeing physical assaults of Muslims. And we're seeing intergenerational trauma because children who are with their parents, and specifically children who are with their mothers, we heard from mothers who would be just out in the grocery store doing some grocery shopping, getting abused. And that trauma is affecting children. We went to a school in Mississauga, and there was about 30 Muslim kids they had gathered for us to speak to. And when we asked, and they all said, oh, no problem. It doesn't happen to us. And then we just had one girl who came out and said, yes, it's happened to me. And it was as though the floodgates opened. And I remember there was this one young man, tall young man, about 14, young teenager, who said, it's never happened to me. But in the end, when he read the poem that he had written, we realized how much trauma he had been dealing with. So when I go to events, I talk to our Muslim parents. I say, please have conversations with your children. Find out what their day is like. Because quite often we're also seeing there's a disconnect between the parents and the children.
Okay. So are there any recommendations that you have put forth through?
We put in 13 recommendations, and the government has sent a response. We're in the process, I think in the next few weeks, we'll be looking at that response. What they do is a hate crime, but we found that the law enforcing agencies like the police also sometimes will not call it a hate crime. But statistics are kept on on every hate crime. So sometimes what is a hate crime, they will not categorize it as a hate crime. So we need to work with our police. We had the Canadian intelligence CSIS. We had them as witnesses. We had the border services guards as witnesses. We had everyone. We also found that Muslim charities were getting audited more by the Canadian Revenue Agency. So there's so many. It was a complete study. We looked at every aspect of issues that were impacting Muslim. We talked to doctors, we talked to teachers, we students, we talked to you name it, and we talked to lawyers, and everybody could recite an instance, of what had happened to them.
Okay, so ma'am, apart from these this racism and hate crimes and Islamophobic elements over there, and the challenges that Muslims, in particular in Pakistanis, probably are facing over there, what are the other challenges that Pakistani diaspora is facing, and how do you propose to mitigate them?
Well, Pakistani diaspora, it's a bit of a culture shock when they come. And I think there's a perception out there, which maybe was true earlier, but I mean, ever since I've been here, it's you come here, you have to fit in, right? Because you have chosen to come to this country. It's not easy to find a job. The biggest problem we have is that most of the degrees that you get from the Pakistani universities and colleges are not recognized here. So a lot of people, especially in the medical profession, they have to come requalify. Engineers have to come requalify, and they will requalify. In fact, I was talking to somebody last night who called me and said, my wife was a gynecologist in Khan Hospital. So I said, then what made you move? You could have had a good life. And he says, she's cleared all her exams, but she can't find residency anywhere. So, there's issues, there are problems, some that we have sort of created. But it's a very active diaspora, I must say. And when I came, there weren't too many. But now, from what I hear, it's close to maybe 500,000 Canadians of Pakistani origin.
It's the fourth or fifth largest diaspora of Pakistan outside of Pakistan.
Yes, so about half a million. Yes. But the interesting thing is that when you look at the Canadian census numbers, they have us as smaller. And the reason for that is, and I'm trying to tell them, this is the reason, is that like my mother tongue is Pashto. So if I put Pashto, I'm lumped in as with Afghanistan. And the people who are Punjabi speaking, they put Punjabi, they lumped in with, India. So they don't really have the true numbers. But the numbers that I'm quoting you are the numbers that I have gotten from the embassies, because, for the paperwork they do and the registrations they have. So I would tend to believe 500,000.
Okay. Yeah. So, ma'am, what are the opportunities then? If the challenges are there, if they have opted for something over there, now the cultural shock is also there, and you are advising them to, adjust themselves. But what are the opportunities over there in Canada for the Pakistani diaspora?
Well, if you're not afraid of hard work, and you're not afraid of doing any job, you can make it. Yeah, my advice to everyone is don't go to the big cities, because there's so many people already in the big cities. Move out into smaller towns. And then if you feel, you really want to be in Toronto, you really want to be, Vancouver, then come back. But especially like the gentleman I was talking to yesterday, I said, look, ask your wife to look for residencies outside of Toronto. There's more opportunities there. So, you have to, like what I have taught my children, you have to work hard at some point. So you do it when you're young, instead of having to do it when you're older. So, if you, look at us, where I have come, but with me, it was, the work was there, but I did it without thinking what is waiting for me at the end of the road. So you have to push yourself a little bit and be willing to take risks.
Being a Canadian Pakistani, you also carry a very, huge political legacy with you from Pakistan's side. And for that matter, you also visit Pakistan a lot. I'm not going to talk about any Pakistani political scenario right now, because I know that you are not very much updated about that. And I also do not want to talk about that. But being a Canadian Pakistani and being a Canadian senator, how do you see the relationships between Pakistan and Canada, number one? And number two, since there is a political instability in Pakistan for last almost 3 or 4 years, and there is a dire need in Pakistan right now for foreign direct investment, but somehow the policies in Pakistan are not bearing any fruits. How do you propose, number one, to bridge some gaps between Pakistan and Canadian authorities so that, there is a government-to-government or state-to-state relationship that may strengthen the economic factor of the two states? And how do you see the relationships of Pakistan and Canada in future? Are they going to be strategic in nature at some point of time?
Well, Canada and Pakistan have always enjoyed good relationships. Canada was one of the first few countries to recognize Pakistan. There's been some challenges along the way. And I'll tell you, for the first time this year, I did an event last year. So May is Asian Heritage Month in Canada. And last year, I did a program here on Parliament Hill for Pakistan. And we had a very, very successful program. And, there were people who supported us and people who sponsored it. This year, when we planned something, I had to cancel it. And people were telling me, I can say to look, yeah, hum bezar hain. Hum bezar hai. We don't know, we look at the state of Pakistan, and these are my friends who are really well-to-do, who have really succeeded over here in business, and he said, we will give you the money if you want us to sponsor that program, but we really don't feel like doing anything for Pakistan. And for me, that was very, very sad, because like I always say, Pakistan's my mother. I have two mothers. Pakistan gave me birth. Canada is sustaining me. And for me, that's very sad that the diaspora is feeling that, enough, bahut ho chuka hai. And that they tell me that we're very disheartened with Pakistan. And I'm hearing it from everyone, that they're saying, we really don't feel like doing anything. And I'm saying, come on, guys, they need a hand. Let's do something. So, the government is there. But the diaspora also plays an important role, because they can always pressure their MPs and the government, because it's all about votes, to do more for Pakistan. And but Canada has always come through for Pakistan, and I'm hoping they will continue to come through for Pakistan. But the diaspora is a little bit disappointed.
Busha would want to ask a question, and she would want to
because we're on this topic, and trade, and it's like it hits home with me. So Salma, Senator, last year, as part of the trade organization that I preside over, we had the very first Pakistani single country expo here in Vancouver. And Canada talks about, and here I'm going to talk about as a Pakistani, so bear with me. I'm not gonna. My stance here is as a Pakistani, not as a Canadian. We talk about the strategic corridor that we have, the Asia Pacific corridor that a few years ago has included Pakistan. But when you really sit and when you really want to do something, it doesn't deliver. Like, we had such awful visa acceptance ratio when it came to visas for our businessmen, diaspora, that wanted to come here, invest, that wanted to come here and exhibit their product and services into that expo. So that was just an abomination. And then I went to the Canadian embassy in Islamabad, and the ambassador is such a lovely person, but she goes to me, Busha, nothing is in my hands. My hands are tied. And I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, so we signed this strategic sort of corridor within the two countries, but we treat Pakistan so differently than we treat China or and India even. And what are the reasons? What is the point of even adding Pakistan to the list of those countries where you are going to be strategic partner, but then Canada doesn't deliver?
Yeah, Bushra, I hear you. And this is the visa problem is something I've worked on since 2010. Even though when I was appointed, I was told, you're not here to be helping people with visas. Remember, it's legislation. But I've worked on it nonstop. And the problem you faced, there was a similar problem faced here in Toronto. When everything was set up, the interests were there, people wanted to come, and yet traders were not given visas. And it's not only the business people who are not given visas, it's the students. The rejection rate for students currently is almost in the 70s.
Yeah, 74%.
Yeah. I put it at them and I said, it's 79. And they said, no, because we regularly have meetings with, different people and people responsible. And they said, no, it's 72. And I said, you don't think that's high? And they said, well, we're trying to work on it. The other big thing is with the current government, all 4 of the immigration ministers, I have brought up the issue of why isn't the visa office in Pakistan? You tell me that, and also why is Pakistan still a hardship post? Why isn't it a family post? I said, Your ambassadors, people in the embassy, they're all over town. They're flying here and there. You know, they're going north. They're going up the trails in Islamabad. And yet you're going to tell us that it's not safe. Oh no, we're going to move it. We're going to move it. But nothing has been done. So it's an issue that I've brought up for years and years and years now. But I don't know what it is that's holding them back. I know bureaucrats move very slowly, but this is a sore point with the community, with the diaspora. We get so many requests in my office for visa applications, and I'm frustrated too.
Yeah. No, thank you, Senator. I hear you. And I didn't want to make it sound like a visa problem. I wanted to raise it as a strategic partner problem because we've added in the list, but we're not treated as such. That was my thing. Okay. So I hear you 100%. And I know you've put in the work, and that's why I wanted to get your statement. I'm just going to follow up with another question of that. How important is Canadian Senate when it comes to policy making in Canada?
Well, so what happens at the bills originate in the House, but we can also have PMBs, which is private members' bills, which originate in the Senate. And a bill does not become a law until the senators say yes. And that means something can be rejected totally, something can be amended, in which case it goes back to the House. And we with the Senate, we take our time in looking at legislation. With us, it comes to the Senate, and then from the Senate, we send it to our committees, and where we examine the bills, and then we'll bring it back. So at the committee stage, at the second reading, at third reading, you can have amendments proposed. So until we don't say yes, the bill does not become law. So the Senate has a very, very important role in Canada. We deal with legislation, and our committees do some of the most important work. Currently, I'm on 4 committees. I'm chair of the Human Rights. I'm on the Fisheries Committee, and I'm on the Rules and Regulations of the Senate Committee. And because I'm an artist, I'm on the Arts and Heritage Committee, because you know that our West Block is being rebuilt, the Senate and the House of Commons. They're trying to make it more modern, to be a sort of Wi-Fi, and just to make it a modern place, more welcoming place. So we go and look at the art installation, what we should put there, how this should look. I was actually there, and I was walking up scaffolding and touching the roof of the Senate, which was so neat. So I get to do a lot of neat things also because I'm a senator.
Okay. So climate change is one of the major factors which has been at play at the international fronts, and China being one of the flag bearers of climate change activism. It's there. We know all about it, but again, it has a certain gap. There is a gap between Pakistan and Canadian activism, Canadian help. Pakistan is one of those few countries who is badly affected by the climate change. A couple of years ago, we had the worst of the floods in the history. But still, there is not much been done by the, I won't say the Canadian state, but I think there's a kind of gap which needs to be bridged. So how do you propose to do that?
Well, I have, and this is a conversation I've had, with the fellow parliamentarians and with others, that if you look at Pakistan's carbon footprint, it's very, very small. It's 0.1% or it's really small.
0.1%, yes.
Yeah. So I'm saying, yet the impact of climate change on Pakistan has been devastating. We had the flood in 2010. We had the flood recently, and it climate change. So the developed nations sometimes, I don't think there's that understanding that what they do and impacts. I don't like to call it developing nations, emerging economies. And a classic example is Pakistan. And it's interesting because my older daughter, who's done her PhD in public health, she's actually gotten a grant to study the impacts of climate change in Pakistan. So she got a grant to study the gendered impacts of climate change. And as a case study, she chose Pakistan. She chose Swat. So she's doing work over there just to look at that. So it's there, but trying. Again, the pace at which everything moves is very, very slow. And I mean, we still have people here who don't believe in climate change, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's another issue.
They're here as well. So, ma'am, coming back to some, lighter questions, how often do you visit Pakistan?
I used to come every year, sometimes twice a year. I haven't been for a year and a half, but I am coming in the summer, inshallah. I'm coming as a tourist. I'm going to the northern areas. I've booked my tour for 10 days. And I'm
Wonderful.
excited, but now when I hear it's 50 plus, I'm saying, ooh, did I do the right thing? Because I was talking to my sister who said, bijli bhi nahi hai, gas bhi nahi hai. We have generators, but gas nahi hai, so they don't run, there's no
Yeah,
electricity.
on the northern side, you know that these things will be mitigated due to the weather conditions over there. But any memory that you associate with Pakistan while you were being here, especially in your childhood, and which you cherish a lot while being there in Canada?
You know what I cherish is the family ties. For me, at my age, how important it is to have those family ties. And sometimes when we're in Pakistan and we're in the joint family homes, we take it for granted, we get irritated. But believe me, that's such a source of strength, to have loved ones surrounding you, to be with your loved ones. And because, like, I have no family in Canada. I mean, there's me, my husband, and my 2 daughters. But I think for me, the strength is having your loved ones around you and there to support you. Because as human beings, we all need people around us. And my children also have very strong links with Pakistan. Both my kids are fluent in Pashto. They can get by in Urdu. And my older one, Anushka, she did her PhD research in a small village between Mardan and Charsada. And the research was done all in Pashto. And then she transcribed it into English. My younger one, who's a lawyer, Shanze, did an internship at the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And she also worked in Lahore in Asma Jangir, the organization that she had. So she worked there too. So very, very strong links. My children keep coming and going. There was one time when I was here in Canada and both my children were in Pakistan. So I have kept up those links. I also am a member of the IPU, Interparliamentary Union. Pakistan's a member, the Commonwealth. In fact, quite a number of years, I was actually head of the delegation for the IPU, and I interact with the Pakistani delegation. We have conversations, we have bilaterals. So I'm very engaged at every level. And also in the Senate, everybody knows about Pakistan, and I try. Like I tell everyone, all of you are ambassadors for Pakistan. I tell the diaspora. And if you do something, it impacts everyone who's here and it impacts Pakistan also. So we must always behave with great dignity. And I must say, the one thing about the Pakistani diaspora, they're pretty good. Bushra will kind of verify, not involved in that much crime or anything like that, hardworking. Our students are doing really well in universities. So the diaspora is really contributing to Canada's growth.
So, ma'am, from being from the KP region, your roots are there, and there is a kind of disturbance over there for past 6 decades now, since the Soviet invasion, and then afterwards, whatever we did with Afghanistan or Afghanistan did with us. Being a Pashtun now. Now, this is a question that if you would want to answer, then it's up to you. But being a Pashtun, what do you propose? Because even nowadays, when Pakistan was thinking back in 2021, so you see the Taliban are coming and probably most of our problems will be solved. And there was a kind of euphoric state over here in Pakistan in certain quarters. But everything, turned upside down in last 2 years, in last 2.5 years. So what do you propose now on the public diplomacy level, not on the state-to-state level, not on the government-to-government level, but on the public diplomacy level, that how do we mitigate this hostility between the two nations? Because people are suffering right now. There are families living on the both sides of the borders, and there are tribes who are actually interconnected with each other, and they're suffering. I've been to Kabul a couple of times. I've been to Kandahar. I've been to other areas as well, and I've seen that there is grave human rights atrocity being committed by the states. So how do you propose to mitigate this situation in particular?
Oh my God, I think we need a couple of hours to talk about this. But the issue is that I'm seeing it here, even the hostility between even the ethnic Pakhtuns over here. We used to have an association, a cultural association, which was, Pakhtuns from Afghanistan and from Pakistan. and it couldn't survive because of the fighting that was going on. I was recently at an event with 600 Pukhtuns. There was a musical thing, and it ended up with them getting into a fight. And I walked out and I saw the police had been called. I went back into the hall, got onto the stage, and I basically screamed at them. I said, "What on earth are you guys doing? We already have such a bad name, and the police is here." So, basically the Pukhtuns were used and then spat out. I don't know, is that a good thing? Like, and what bothers me is I don't want to get into the politics of, what happened. We all know the history. We all know what has happened. But if you look at the Pukhtuns, there isn't a single family in that region, in Pukhtunkhwa, that hasn't been impacted by terrorism.
Yes.
In some, there's been in their homes, there's been acts of terror. So, there's been great sacrifice by the Pukhtuns, by all of Pakistan. And that's the one thing I consistently remind everyone, that this was a war not of Pakistan's choosing, but Pakistan got, and we know the history of how Pakistan got involved, so I don't want to rehash all that stuff. But, Pukhtunkhwa has suffered greatly, really, because of our border. But then all of Pakistan has suffered too. And, and to this day, young men, in uniform are dying, and other young people are dying. And, and then we also have the issue of, and because I'm here, people approach me about everything, and everyone has a complaint. They talk to me about what's happening in Balochistan, what's happening in Pukhtunkhwa, what's happening in Punjab, what's happening in Karachi, and I'm hoping at some point we'll get leadership that will look at all these problems. And, because you learn from your leadership, like in a home, you learn from your parents, right? The children watch their parents. So in a country, they will look at their leaders and they will learn from their leaders. So there's great responsibility on the shoulders of the leaders, and I'm hoping at some point, things will, because Pakistan has so much potential. If you look at it, God has blessed it with so much, and yet we have been struggling for the past few years.
Ma'am, last question from my side. Being a Canadian Pakistani who have achieved, being a woman as well, mashallah, who have achieved a lot there in Canada. There's a kind of hopelessness right now in the youth, in particular, of Pakistani youth, in general in the populace of Pakistan. What is the future that you see of Pakistan right now, being a Canadian Pakistani? A very candid kind of answer would be much appreciable. And second thing is, what do you suggest or advise to the people of Pakistan, particularly the youth?
Well, I think, what is the percentage of youth? It's very, very high. How much is it?
68%. 68%.
Under the age of 30. Yeah. That's
it.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think their sense of frustration is growing because they don't see anything in the future for them. A lot of them who come out of educational institutions, even, who get an education, I will hear when I'm there, I've done my master's, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. So I think we specifically need to do something for the youth. I really don't know what the answer is. It's a difficult question you've asked me, because when I'm there, I see it and I hear how people are, with education, with everything, they're running around trying to just get a job, trying to survive. And they don't see any youth, any kind of hope. They're very, very despondent, very, very despondent, the young people, which is not a good sign. That's the future leadership. We need to bring them. I think we need to encourage. We need to have more of our people who are successful mentor our young people. We need leadership to think of the future of Pakistan and to bring these young people forward. Take them along on that journey. Teach them. That's what we do. In my office, I constantly have people, students from university coming and working with me. Not working with me, but like coming and volunteering with me. Somebody is interested in human rights, they'll come with me to the Human Rights Committee. And somebody who's interested in something else will come with me, to that. And we're trying to take them along with us, because we're looking into the future. Today is almost done, right? Let's look into the future.
So instead of pushing them, we need to bring them closer and counsel them at least.
Yes, and mentor them. You know, sometimes students, like when people come to me and they say they're interested in politics, and I say, come, get involved with a senator or an MP and see, because you might realize that might not be the life for you. We need जो हमारे members हैं parliament के, senate के, you know, over here, where like when I get an occasion to go talk to the young people, I always go. I travel all over. You know, I will go to talk to grade 4, but I will also go to universities and let them ask me the question. And then out of that, people will reach out and say, is there any volunteering opportunities in your office? And I will take them in. We will encourage them. And I think people there need to do that. I'm hoping some of the younger people who come along will try and take some of the young people with them.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
I have a closing remark. Salma, I'm working on gathering a delegation. So I have a bunch of MPs, mostly MLAs, and some city council. And I want to extend the invitation to you, taking them to Pakistan in November for a Guru Nanak Peace Conference that's happening in Lahore. So this might be your second trip this year. I don't know, but you know, it's been extended to you, and I would love for you to, you know, come and join and give your input, of course.
I would love to do that, because it's, you know, as chair of the Human Rights Committee, that's the kind of work that's right up my alley. And I do a lot of work here. So if possible, I would love to accompany you. Please send me the invite.
I will do that. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you so much for reaching out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you got your answers to your questions. I'm off to chair the Human Rights Committee.
They were quite on the point, and I actually enjoyed a lot this conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think it's for you. It's beyond midnight now, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's perfectly fine.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.